All right, details finally surfacing about an FBI spreadsheet that kept track of the Steele dossier claims. The Hill's John Solomon reporting that the spreadsheet detailed how the vast majority of the dossier's claims, about 90%, were either wrong, non-verifiable, or things that, an intern could find off the internet. It didn't stop the FBI from using the dossier to secure a FISA warrant targeting the Trump campaign in the final days of the 2016 election. Joining me now to talk about it, Victoria Toensing, a former Deputy Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division of the Justice Department. Joe DiGenova, former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. They're the founding partners of DiGenova and Toensing law firm. Good to see you both. Victoria, what do you make of that story by John Solomon? I mean, we knew all along that the FBI not only was warned that the dossier was phony, but they knew it themselves. So this appears to be proof, a spreadsheet, which of course they claimed they never had.
Have you told the mainstream media? Because the embarrassing Washington Post came out saying, hey, Chris Steele was credible, therefore that's going to undermine the Trump theory that the investigation was flawed. What they don't understand, those poor reporters at the Washington Post, is that it doesn't matter if the person who tells the story is credible. It matters who he got the information from. Now, the person who told Christopher Steele that somebody was in Prague, Cohen was in Prague, they didn't tell it right. The same person who said that Carter Page talked to two Igors in Russia, they didn't get it right. Or that there was a sex tape regarding the president. They didn't get it right. So he can be as credible. In fact, you know what I think, Greg? I think that Christopher Steele said, hey, I told those guys that I didn't know. So that was very credible. That was very credible.
And by the way, Joe, the problem is he's stuck with his prior testimony in the civil lawsuit in Great Britain in which he said, yeah, well, this thing is really unverifiable because it's based on raw intelligence and limited intelligence. So the Washington Post, I'm sure, got it all wrong. They were essentially saying Steele is credible, therefore that equals dossier credible, which is a ridiculous leap.
Well, the most important thing about the spreadsheet is that it proves conclusively that the Bureau knew before it ever filed the first FISA warrant that they couldn't verify it. And they told the FISA court 4 times that they had verified the information in the application for the wiretap on Carter Page, and that was a lie. And those 4 applications constituted crimes. And everybody involved in that process, at the senior levels of the FBI and at the senior levels of the Justice Department, knew that. And we are told that there were Justice Department officials who were very concerned about it, but not one of them stepped up and stopped the filing of those 4 FISA warrant applications. There were crimes committed just there, plus many other crimes as well.
Well, and keep in mind, and I would ask Mueller this question on Wednesday, assuming he testifies, and I don't know if he will, really. But I would say, wait a minute, the 4th FISA warrant application happened on your watch, yours and Rod Rosenstein's watch. Rosenstein signed off on it, the June 2017 FISA warrant. Were you in on that? And were you submitting an unverified application when on the top of it, it says verified?
Yeah, well, we have a few more questions, too, for Mueller, who he certainly can answer process questions like, did you ever know that Andrew Wiseman, when he was head of the fraud section, which, by the way, Greg, I used to supervise, so I know what the portfolio is, were you ever told that he was briefed on the dossier, and so therefore it would have been a conflict for him to be on your staff for the special counsel? Were you ever told that Andrew Wiseman told journalists that the dossier was just fine and dandy when he was head of the fraud section, so it would have been a conflict? We have all kinds of those questions for him that are not about the investigation, but about process.
Yeah. I want to ask you about the Michael Cohen. We learned today from a judge that there aren't going to be any criminal indictments related to campaign finance and the money, the so-called hush money that was paid. And I have to assume, Joe, that's because, as you and I have long argued, paying money in exchange for a non-disclosure agreement is not a crime, but the prosecutors in New York convinced Cohen to cop a plea to a non-crime?
Well, the plea deal they made with Michael Cohen was basically a fraud. They knew that it wasn't a crime what he did. The president said, let's have a settlement, pay it. That was perfectly legal, what the president instructed his attorney to do. What's fascinating about it is, you will recall, right after that guilty plea, the prosecutors went out, held a big news conference, said that nobody was above the law. Somebody on the Fox network, I think he's a former judge, said that it proved conclusively that the president was an unindicted co-conspirator, which was claptrap of the first order. So now we have the case over. No more indictments. What it proved was that that news conference held by those prosecutors in the Southern District was a disgrace. It never should have happened. And you know what? Bill Barr told them, if you're going to continue to do stuff like this, you better have proof. And you know what? They haven't said or done a thing since Bill Barr became Attorney General. I think those folks up in New York have figured out that Bill Barr is a real Attorney General.
Yeah, as opposed to Jeff Sessions, notoriously feckless Jeff Sessions. Victoria, I'm skeptical that Mueller is actually going to testify. I think Jerry Nadler regrets deeply that he subpoenaed him. Mueller doesn't fear Democrats. He fears Republicans. What do you think?
Oh, I absolutely agree with you. And the Republicans sure have the better deal of fantastic questioning. Sometimes they aren't so good at it. They don't follow through. You know, the Republicans aren't as tough as they should be. But I think the Mark Meadows of this world are ready for bear, and they're very, very good, and Jim Jordan. But if I were Mueller's lawyer, I'd say, what do you want to go up there for?
Right. You know,
Stay
the
away.
number one question I would ask, Joe, is, Mr. Mueller, the day before you were appointed special counsel, you were sitting in the Oval Office with the president. And isn't it true he told you his reasons for firing James Comey, which makes you a witness in your own prosecutorial case, which you cannot do under any circumstances? I'd love to hear the answer to that one.
Yeah, and the other thing is, remember, something very interesting that hasn't been written about occurred. Bob Mueller went into that meeting with Rod Rosenstein, and there was just the three of them in the Oval Office. And Bob Mueller had a telephone with him, a cell phone. He left that cell phone in the Oval Office after the meeting. And it is now believed by many people that the cell phone was used to broadcast the meeting between the president, Rod Rosenstein, and Bob Mueller back to FBI headquarters, where they recorded the conversation with the president. Now, why would you leave your phone in the president's office after a meeting? It was to continue to record what happened after they left.
How did he get in there with a phone? We always have ours taken out.
That's right.
You have to put him in a locker, so that something's fishy right there. But you know what, Greg? If that was a crime, if people considered it a crime, anywhere near a crime, to fire Comey, why didn't Rosenstein put that in his authorization for a special counsel? You're supposed to name crimes. He never named one.
Mueller was conflicted. Rosenstein conflicted. They hired a team of partisans. It was all a witch hunt.
Yes.
The name of my next book. Victoria and Joe.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Victoria and Joe, good to see you both.